All right, guys, a lot of big news happening in the world of MMA. Well, big, we'll see. But there is one big man here who's going to break it all down with me, one of my favorite people out there, the man behind Morning Combat and much, much more, BBC, Big Brian Campbell. Welcome back to Submission Radio, man. Back with popular demand.
Well, you know, that's great because I love fighting and I love Australians. So this is this is combining two of my favorite things in the world, though. You know what I'm saying? Let's go. Yeah.
What about whitehouses and Conor McGregor? What combination of interests is that for you, BC?
Yeah, a lot of like-minded people getting together. All right. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. All right. So that'll wrap up my political editorial for the day, but there you go. Okay.
I mean, it was pretty wild, right? There you see Mac walking in there into the White House.
Weird. In one ways, it's like a big moment or a win for MMA, kind of, but it's also super weird. And I'm wondering, like, is this just the beginning? Like, are we going to get the tape bros in the White House next? You know what I mean? I mean, why don't we call up War Machine and see if he can make a phone call? No, seriously, I think the weirdest part of it, and to act like I have, you know, more than a deep casual interest, even in American politics, it can drive you nuts. So I try to keep my distance. But to act like I know anything about Irish politics, I'd be lying to you. But I certainly could see the, I don't know if irony is the word. I'd have to ask Alanis Morissette. But considering that we seem to know from an MMA side that Conor is, you know, hated in Ireland by just about every regular citizen. So to see him going to the mountaintop of democracy, so to speak, you know, the American White House, and representing the good people of Ireland, I was like, man, I can't wait to see what the tabloid headlines are the next morning. And it turns out they didn't mess around. They were like, this man does not speak for us. So that was all interesting to see right there.
You know, and at the end of the day, Ireland was like, this man does not represent us. This is not a man. This is not a man that represents us. Please do not think that this man represents us. My question to you is, what do you think was going on in Conor McGregor's mind as he was going there and making that speech? Like, in his mind?
Well, you got to ask yourself, what mindset was he under in that moment? And that might sound like a dick move to say, but we do have a running joke that's really not a joke on Morning Combat, sort of that meter counting down the consecutive days that we believe Conor McGregor has been partying like a rock star, which, you know, certainly ties into the whole idea of, will this guy ever fight again? Are we past the point where we should care, or that it would even matter so much beyond a one night, you know, windfall at the box office for the UFC? And to see him on the inauguration day, which was weird altogether, to see Jake, Logan Paul, you know, Joe Rogan, all these people, what Dana White welcomed in like they were, you know, tier one celebrities into the Oval Office. Seeing this kind of connection with government and mixed martial arts is mind-blowing at the highest levels. But, you know, where do I think Conor's head was at? I mean, it was weird. He kind of stumbled into a press conference and did have what seemed to be legitimate issues affecting the Irish people, but I wonder in his head what he was thinking. They did have the cameras on that little brief conversation in the Oval Office where he seemed to big up Trump for his work ethic. So that was kind of interesting. I mean, you know, we haven't seen Conor really working it in a while inside a training camp to get back into a fight. So maybe we can understand that. But hey, Ireland, I get what you're saying, because there's this other guy in that office named Elon Musk that none of us elected. And, you know, he doesn't speak for the American people either, even though he apparently controls them. So there you go. All right.
I'll tell you something, though, man. It's interesting because we keep hearing these, like, rumors. Oh, will it be Ilia Topuria and Conor McGregor? I know you guys broke it down on Morning Combat in your last episode. Like, is that even a possibility? Could that even happen? But we've got Nate Diaz floating around, Conor McGregor floating around, Ilia floating around. What do you think, BC? I mean, he's been in the White House. That's something we never thought could happen. Is a fight with Ilia that much of a reach?
No, the things have been so bizarre in this intersection of combat sports, politics, and everything that goes on with that I'd no longer be surprised about anything. And we do have to remind ourselves that just a year ago at International Fight Week, Conor was supposed to be coming back. So it was recent that he pulls out with an injured toe and gets replaced by a guy with an injured toe, and Alex Pereira. So you do the math there. But I believe you'll get one more fight out of Conor McGregor. And I believe, you know, it's diminishing returns from here on out. I know he's got 2 fights left under his UFC deal. I know he'd love to get in that BKFC circle where he's, you know, co-owner and promoter, what have you. But I think actually, and I've been making this argument, Topuria is the fight. I was arguing for a while that Paddy Pimblett was the fight, and a lot of MMA fans didn't agree with me. But I think we are at the point where Conor is no longer going to contend for world titles, BMF titles. I don't even know if you can get him a win anymore, right? There is that lottery ticket of him against Nate Diaz part 3 that in theory they could cash in at any point, at any age, and it would still kind of matter as a nostalgic one more fun night. But I'm not even sure they could get to that. I think if you are the UFC and you're looking at this guy who is the most popular combat sports athlete, really, of all, I mean, in MMA of all time, right? In boxing, you're talking more of Ali and these other huge names. But the idea of bringing him back and you can put him in there against the guy who seems to have next as your next biggest star, and the weights kind of agree, right? You'd probably have to do it at welterweight, but they kind of agree. I think that's the move if you want to fight back against this narrative that us MMA journalists and podcasters are arguing, but arguing with pushback from the hardcore fan base. Does the UFC have a star problem? Yeah, they do. Do they have a problem of prioritizing, greed and stuff over matchmaking and building to super fights? It seems that way. This would answer a lot of that. But are you like me? I just can't, even though I've been for years going, he's going to come back and there's so many fights you can make that matter. I no longer have the belief that he can do a full training camp and put himself into position to win a fight. I feel like you're waiting for him to gas out early in round 2 or snap his leg again. That's really where we're at.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. I'm a little bit like UBC where I see the fight getting announced and then it's like, will he make it to the fight? Will he be able, because this is the problem, right? There's no one in Conor McGregor's training camp that can tell him what to do. And back in the day, we saw with John Kavanagh, who did like a tour here in Australia, and Casper and I, we did like a stage show with John Kavanagh here in Australia where we went city to city and we interviewed him. This was before the Floyd Mayweather fight. But the big narrative was, John Kavanagh was almost like this father figure, kind of bigger brother who would bring him in and tell him, you can't do that, and sort of saved him through some really hairy situations in Conor McGregor's life when he was younger. But that doesn't exist anymore. Like, Conor just does what he wants. And I just don't know without a person there tell him what to do if he can return. It's interesting that the point that you and Luke have made, though, about how the star power has diminished from the UFC. I feel like the UFC back in the day, not only did they have better star power, but they had the moves to make an Ilia Conor McGregor fight happen. Like, they put those fights together. So I feel like it's what you guys said. It's a star power issue, but it's also an issue of them kind of not cashing in and jumping in and doing these kind of exciting things and making the most out of these situations and bringing it to the fans, right? They could do still a lot with what they have if they cleverly put these fights together.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not one thing, right? There's not one thing you can point to that answers this question or proves it. It's everything all at once. Or is that a title of an Oscar-winning movie? It might be. But the whole point is it's all of their decisions in this Endeavor era since the sale in 2016, where we've gone from this fight promotion run by fight people with the objective always, even if the objective was always to make the 3 letters, the UFC and the face of Dana White, the biggest star. That's kind of always been the case. But what has transcended that was the fact that they were so regularly building all of these stars that, look, at the end of the day, people aren't tuning in for Dana and the 3 letters. They may week to week when they don't know everybody on a fight night card. But combat sports historically, no matter if it's pro wrestling, boxing, or MMA, it's the monster events, the ones that bring in the casuals 2, 3, 4 times a year. Those are the tentpole things, as Scott Coker used to say, that revive the fan base, that keep it going, because it's not just hardcores. You need the casuals at the same time. And I think the more we've gotten into this TKO era, especially the realities of the ESPN broadcasting deal, where it wasn't about, can we make the biggest fights that sell the most pay-per-views? It was instead a vertical strategy of, can we fill a fight card every single weekend? That changed the financial focus. Pay-per-view buys weren't their focus anymore, because financially it was more about, can we expand into new lands? Can we grow, like I said, horizontally as opposed to vertically? So that all plays into it. But I think that's why it makes what's going to happen the rest of this year as we lean into the end of the ESPN deal in the States for UFC and their future broadcasting deal, whether that's Netflix, Amazon Prime, a mixture of both. Are the problems that we're complaining about right now a result of ESPN wanting a fight card every week and UFC obliging? Meaning, could a different TV deal with different parameters being asked for, could that change a lot of the things we're complaining about? I wonder, have the UFC taken their eye off the ball and been more about greed and kind of making UFC a Walmart, McDonald's microwave type feel? I feel yes, that is true. I feel like Lorenzo and the guard of old would be looking that. I feel like they'd be announcing McGregor Topuria before us as fans and journalists even started to talk about it, because that's what it used to be all about. Now it's more about how many government contracts can we get from the big cities, right? And how can we continue to expand the arms of the tentacles of this TKO machine? I think the problem with that is you're constantly driving out the fans faster, the turnovers quicker. Will it matter in the end? I mean, with a lot of debates we can do ad nauseum, but I feel like some of these super fights, like you mentioned, would have already happened. John versus Tom would have already happened, because it wouldn't have been so much about penny pinching, and it would have been about every decision we make helps the sport move forward. I don't think they care about growing the sport anymore. They care about growing that bottom line.
I want to just quickly ask you this very, very quickly. Prime McGregor versus, we all know right now, if Topuria and McGregor got into the octagon right now, you know, Ilia 90% chance wins, right? Like 95, but like it's not even a question of you know, can McGregor win? It's a question of, you know, physically, would he be able to, you know, take the punches? You know, he had a career-ending injury, right? He's had crazy stuff happening in his personal life. There's like so much stuff that just doesn't really give him much of a chance here. But if this was prime Conor McGregor and the Ilia that we know now, who do you think would win that fight?
I still think that if they're fighting at the same weight class, which I think of what you're pitching, right? Or what is prime McGregor in our eyes? Is it the night he tackled Eddie at 155, or is it that 145 run through Mendes?
Let's do Eddie, because that's not when he was like cutting off a leg to make weight. So this is like prime rehydrated Conor McGregor.
Well, look, we don't know yet about Topuria at 155, but I have a suspicion he'll be just fine, which is why he's making this move right now. But prime versus prime, Topuria is a more well-rounded, better fighter. So that percentage of what we feel if they fought now, right? I'd be like, well, it's about 95%, as you said, Topuria would win. I'm still willing to give, you know, 60% in prime versus prime, but I wouldn't bet on Topuria. And that's the difference, because there was something about, for as long as it would last, and who knows, like we can all rewrite Conor McGregor's history, right? Just like we can do, I know it sounds a little bit morbid, but in rock and roll, we can rewrite, well, what if Kurt Cobain or Jim Morrison or Jimi Hendrix or Janis Joplin weren't part of the 27 Club? What if they didn't die right as their peak was happening? Would they be these all-timers that transfix different genres? Or
if Conor McGregor never had the Floyd Mayweather fight?
Right. The whole idea of like, would they have been great, or would they have just turned into average? Conor McGregor was riding a lightning bolt of magic. You all know this. I'm not teaching you anything, but that's 2014, 15, and 16 was outside of the commercial boom, and it was the biggest commercial boom we've ever seen. It's why you ask any MMA hardcore fan or journalist, what was the best year as a fan? Inevitably, we're all going to say 2016 for a reason. But what I'm really trying to say here is we don't really know after that, even without the Mayweather fight, even without the whiskey, even without the time off, all these things that happened to McGregor, I don't know if he would have been able to stand up to that, because he wasn't overall a well-rounded fighter. Over time, he would have slowed down. People would have caught up to him. But if you're allowing me to take mountaintop McGregor like you are, the one at UFC 205 in 2016, the one who could just mentally break other people, and all he needed was his plan A, and that plan A was to find your chin in the first round. I'm still putting my money on that guy to find Topuria's chin, and then we'll see what happens next. I do still have respect for who that version of McGregor really was. It's why I have the Aldo McGregor poster on my wall right here, because I cannot believe all of these years later that moment even happened. But there was something about the magic of the belief that he had in himself, obviously mixed with prime physical abilities, but that belief made him a superhero. And that's why it's still historically really hard to pick any 145er in history and say that guy definitely beats Conor. I don't think we know that.
In a world where, imagine Conor McGregor somehow comes out and beats Topuria, this conversation starts changing all over again, but that's not very likely. We'll see what happens. By the way, Nick Diaz, all great guys in their prime to fight a guy like Ilia Topuria as well. You know, it's just all these crazy dream matchups that you think of that could have been amazing. Let me ask you this, because the fallout as well, speaking of guys losing their aura, the fallout is continuing for Alex Pereira. Not only did this man lose to Ankalaev, not only did Dana White say, I don't think it's going to happen at heavyweight. And all of us were like, he's going to heavyweight regardless. We all want to see it. And then we all watch that fight. We're like, I think we were wrong. I don't think we do. Not only is this Usyk fight, you know, the boxing match, now not looking very likely, but Dricus du Plessis, doing an interview recently, was doing a podcast, said that the aura is now gone when it comes to Pereira. He wants to see him rematch Ankalaev, and he still doesn't really feel like he wants to do this fight with him now, even if he does beat Big Ank and regain his title. What's your reaction to DDP being like, the money is not in the bag here any longer?
I mean, it's an interesting statement. Maybe he's putting that out there to motivate Pereira to find the true prime Poatan aura all over again that he seemed to have lost in this one fight. And it's because, you know, it's a few reasons potentially, right? Not just the fact that Ankalaev was always going to be the toughest style matchup for him in ways that we thought had more to do with grappling, but it turned out to be that combination of size, smarts, technique, and the threat of the takedown, not actually getting it. But what I say about aura is this. To me, aura essentially means the peak of someone's career, which is not, there's no time limit on that. More often than not, it's shorter than longer. That doesn't mean that great all-time legends haven't been able to stay at a high level for a very long time, even surviving losses or changes in weight or what have you. There's something special about those that have been able to do it over 2 decades, right? And just can linger and stay at the top. But I'm talking about your very peak. Masvidal, surprisingly in 2019, found that very peak late in his career, but it was how long could he keep that up? It turned out 1 calendar year, and it was amazing, right? McGregor was sort of like 2.5 years, and it was amazing. The one thing, though, I do want to bring up regarding that is when McGregor supposedly lost his aura at UFC 196 against Nate Diaz, the last-minute opponent replacement for Rafael dos Anjos, and then succumbed at a higher weight after dominating the first round to fatigue and, you know, general inexperience, you know, of what happens when he's not the front runner leading that fight. I remember writing a column for ESPN.com right after that fight that basically said this: there's one way to regain that aura potentially, to find that magic all over again, and that's going directly back into that fight at the same weight class, immediate rematch, and if he can get through it and have his hand raised, he can erase what happened to him. To some degree, that actually is exactly what happened. McGregor went back there at UFC 202 and won an all-time classic fight, and then went on to do what we said was his true mountaintop moment, winning a title in the second weight class. I think what helps Pereira here is that not only did he not get knocked out, not only did he not gas out by getting out wrestled for 5 rounds, I actually think you can make a backdoor argument that to the letter of the law of the scoring, that he actually should have won that fight. I scored it 3-2 for him in real time, only I'm not going to be standing on the streets with a sign that says either MMA scoring sucks or, hey guys, Ankalaev lost. Why? Because we all watched that fight and Ankalaev fought the better fight overall. He made Pereira do things that we didn't think he would do, right? Not be able to fight off the back foot and look human. So is it a combination of too much too soon for Pereira? He's been the ultimate company MVP. We all know about that record late last year of 3 title defenses in 176 or so days. And the fact that he's knocking out killers on short notice, injured, sick, all of these facts that would come out afterwards. You can only keep that up for so long, obviously. What we still don't know, though, is this a pin in the balloon and you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together, so to speak? Or is this a situation where Poatan can regroup, make the changes that he needs to, have a full healthy training camp, have no excuses, and come in there and get his hand raised? I think the fact, like I mentioned, that he didn't really actually lose by much, even though our eyes told us that he was exposed or controlled or audited or whatever, you know, word you're looking to say. I still think he could regain that aura. And I wonder if this is DDP being a little bit hopeful, because one of those comments was, I lost my payday. This was his big opportunity. I do think, though, that this will slow down that idea of him going up to heavyweight in the same way that a little fight called Adesanya Błachowicz did the same thing. Because I remember a time, and I don't know if you do, Dennis, where we were talking, well, after Izzy takes the belt at 205, maybe he could fight John Jones to become the first 3-division champion. You know, the same thing with
his coach. So we did the sit down with him and his coach, and we were the people that the coach said, we don't want to fight light heavyweight. We want to fight Stipe at heavyweight. Do you remember that? Their plan was to go to heavyweight. We were all like, let's go.
And, you know, I mean, can Pereira swim at heavyweight? I don't know. I always felt like he had the kickboxing experience at higher weights to pull it off. If he took the time to rebuild his body, still he's going to have certain holes in his game, yes. But it's all going to come down to aura, reputation-wise, what he can potentially do in that immediate rematch. I feel like the promotion is going to book it. Yes, you've got good cut fights coming up at 205, like this Saturday with Błachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg. That could produce a good-looking next title challenger if either guy wins, and especially Błachowicz with the history, but with both of those gentlemen in the title, at the top of the title picture right now, or Ulberg being maybe one of those next big things that's rising. So I don't fear for Alex that this is the end or he can't be that guy again, but he's got to address some things that I don't think he had to during that run, because he was knocking people out, he was intimidating people, and he largely wasn't put in positions, maybe outside of that Błachowicz fight where he had to work off of his back a little bit. He wasn't put in positions to be exposed. Ankalaev can do that to him. So let's wait and see what happens next. But if he wins it, to your point, maybe you can still make DDP fight. Maybe you can come up to 205 and you still have a blockbuster there.
Let's not forget that Ankalaev makes people look bad. Like, not in the sense that he beats people, but when he fights people, he doesn't make them look great. You know what I mean? Because he's a guy that's always kind of in your face, but he's a little bit awkward and people don't know how to fight him. So a lot of his fights, because Big Unk, you know, we respect him. He's the champ. You can't take anything away from him. But it's almost like the way that he fights kind of diminishes the people that he fights, or like the excitement factor of the fight, because he kind of draws out their life slowly from them like a wizard. And that's why I think this loss hurt Pereira more than what people, more like than a lot of other losses, because he just kind of stood there and we were like, well, you knock everyone out. How can you just be standing there for 5 rounds? And it's only because we've seen Ankalaev. Are you there, BC?
Yes.
Yeah, we've seen Ankalaev draw that life out of people. So I'm hoping that Pereira can figure out a way to win, but also make sure that this fight kind of works, because it's not something that many fighters have figured out how to do.
By the way, I wish that was a skill that got applauded more from a critical pound for pound Dana White promotion leader level. And I understand that it'll never be sexy to do what Ankalaev did. Or let's remember when Tyron Woodley was atop the welterweight division.
Yes.
Even though he won the title with an explosive knockout, what he did in that reign was piece by piece, take what his opponents do well, take it away from them completely, and make them fight on his terms. I do wish we lived in a world where we could come out of that fight going, damn, Ankalaev made the dangerous guy in this business look ordinary. But instead, we came out of there going, damn, that was boring. Damn, does UFC have a star problem? Damn, maybe Poetan's not as good as we thought. There you go.
Let me ask you this, man. Obviously, you mentioned Carlos Ulberg and Jan Błachowicz. I want to get your quick thoughts on that fight. But before I do, what do you make of this whole UFC London main event? Leon Edwards believes this is for a title shot. Obviously, we've already seen Sean Brady in the mix. But one of the crazy things that people aren't really talking about is, if JDM wins here, surely Islam is going to be the next person to get this welterweight title shot, right? Like, it looks like they're waiting to see what happens from this fight. How do you sort of break down what is going to be the next challenger for this title fight? Because to me, you know, Shavkat, I don't know what's happening with his knee. There's guys around the division talking, you know, the Ian Garys of the world are like, what the hell's going on? But then no one's really talking about the dark figure in Islam, just waiting basically for Bilal to lose so he can step in.
I mean, the UFC's got some interesting decisions to make, and it is dependent upon a few things. And I think you identified the key part of this. Islam Makhachev, in my opinion, would have already moved up to welterweight if Bilal Muhammad wasn't the champion. The fact that he still is, the fact that there's been a bottleneck atop the division, the fact that Bilal hasn't been healthy, and we needed to see a replacement fight like Shavkat, Ian Gary, which I think only kind of in some ways, made the top end of this division even more fun. Look, no one's talking about it, but welterweight might actually be, I don't want to say most exciting, but it might be the deepest, best division in the sport. Lightning strike, meaning we used to always say that about lightweight. We said it about bantamweight in recent years. I said last year that I thought middleweight, in terms of the title picture and the amount of big names at the top, was the most intriguing. But welterweight's got the best depth, 1 to 15, and they do have a problem at the moment, meaning that there's a bottleneck, a lot of deserving folks for that title picture. But the fact that Belal has been a little bit inactive, missing that last title defense, and the fact that Islam's future is tied into that may play into our favor if they can either get Islam to agree to fight Ilia or get Topuria into a debut fight at 155 quick enough to set up what, to me, is no-brainer, the best fight you can make in the sport. The number 1 and 2 pound for pound, Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. But to your point, what if Belal loses in this fight? Does that flip everything upside down and welcome Islam? It might, but I would, if I was the UFC, hold off just a bit on that. While Islam deserves to do what he wants, and he's 33, which means he's right at that peak of his best, and it's only, it's not going to get better from here. But at the same time, I think Gary showed against Shavkat that that was almost a win in a loss, that he's ready for a title shot. We know all the other players in and around this division. I don't think the UFC can go wrong here. However it's going to play out, it's going to be exciting. But are you like me? Don't you want to see Islam Ilia first? Or are you of that belief that, look, Islam's fought enough 45ers coming up. He's done what he's done. Let him go fight for that title. I mean, it's an interesting debate.
I'm like you, where I'm like, hey, if Ilia's no longer in this division, what are we doing here? Yeah. Are we going to use this man to bring up the star power and create big fights? Look, I want to see Islam Ilia. Honestly, I know people are like, hey, he doesn't deserve it, blah, blah, blah. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where you get two guys coming. I mean, we spoke about it last time. Islam's never had the rival that he's wanted. Ilia, could be that guy. Ilia said that down the track he wants to do 170. It could be a McGregor thing where he goes even into lightweight, does really well, and even moves up to welterweight and fights Islam again down the track. I just don't know how you don't cash that in. But if the plan is to do Justin Gaethje Islam next, maybe then, because we're seeing Islam saying no, he doesn't want to take this fight. And if that's the case, then maybe that's what you do. Charles Oliveira is saying, I'm not fighting unless it's for the belt. Maybe there's an interim belt, which would be hard to explain.
I mean, Sarukian needs a title shot, it seems.
Sarukian, there's more people waiting for a title shot here than people waiting for the ESPN Plus connection to it.
That's a great point. And then, back to that point about Edwards versus Brady, I think obviously this is the fight that could give Brady the critical sort of, respect that he's been looking for. But if Leon Edwards wins, a guy that everybody, including my partner Luke Thomas, is just seemingly counting out, as if his loss with the title to Belal in the title fight and the excuses afterwards about the time of day of that fight, as if that suddenly makes him, over the hill. This guy was a top 5 pound for pound just like last summer. So at 33, I want to see what he comes back to. Imagine he gets a fairly strong statement win against Brady. It would be hard to keep him out of that title picture too. So, hey, Islam, finish your business at 55 first. BC talking here. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll tell you what, man, when you look at the rankings in that division as well, you got Belal up there, you got Leon number 1. So obviously we'll see what happens here. Shavkat's number 2. He's got the knee injury. He's in no rush to come back. Kamaru Usman is still in the rankings right now as I look at it at number 3, guys. So say what you want about the rankings. Kamaru Usman is still number 3, obviously a legend, but he's number 3. JDM, who's actually fighting for the title, number 4. Sean Brady, number 5. Buckley, who, by the way, is an exciting prospect in the division, number 6. Ian Gary, number 7. You and me just spoke about the fact that this man is basically one step away from a title shot. And then the bottom end of this division is very interesting. Gilbert Burns still fighting for his chance to potentially, make the most of his run in the UFC. Colby Covington, where is he at? We don't know what's happened with him. Can he still show glimpses of his former self in that octagon? Jeff Neal, Stephen Thompson at number 11. I think this is the first time he's been out of the 10 in a long, long time. And you got guys like Carlos Prates,
I know,
making their way up. I mean, this division it's one of those Brazilian dramas where you don't know what's going to happen next week. It could be a guy in a mustache who's your brother, and he could be fighting for that belt, BC.
Well, even though there's a lot of old names in that list, I think welterweight is the strongest 10 through 15 or 11 through 15 in terms of guys that could have next, you know, Pratis, Morales, names like that. So it is going to be interesting in this division. I don't like the way that UFC sort of always takes, if a champion loses like Kamaru Usman, they keep him at number one ranking no matter what happens next. Well, what's happened next is Kamaru hasn't fought in this division in 3 years and has lost a bunch of fights in a row. So I don't get it. Maybe that just keeps respect under his name if they want to put him into a big fight. They did that already against Khamzat last time around, but I'm very happy that Kamaru wasn't just thrown into a title fight next. He should be the guy that's fighting a Gary on the way up to find out if Gary's truly for real, or a Sean Brady or a Jack Della Maddalena.
Kamaru's fight with Khamzat, though, aging well, right? After what we've seen Khamzat do against Robert Whittaker, let's see what he does against DDP. At least that's something that looks good for him. Just quickly, BC, we spoke. So, yeah, Edwards Brady, this is going to be an interesting one. I think you and me both think that this is a big test for Edwards to show where he's really at. This is going to be a big answer for him. He shouldn't have a problem putting away someone like a Sean Brady, considering he's fought very similar fighters in the past. He's had a lot of similar training camps. You're in the thought here, though, this is just for us to see where you're at. Was this really what you were saying it was last time? Was it a 5 a.m. issue? Can you come back to sort of some of the brilliance that you had previously? That's probably what you and me are really looking for here.
I think so. I would argue that this is almost a bigger close-up on Sean Brady, who's still, you know, less than 3 fights removed from getting knocked out by Bilal Muhammad and showing that his striking game was just not at the level it needed to be, compared with how much we respect him as a wrestler, as really just a go-getter, a get-after-it, a tireless hard worker. I think there's a lot of questions on him to raise his striking in this opportunity, because he hasn't had to show that in his 2 fights coming back. But back to Leon, I think the biggest thing I want to find out is not if he's past it or over the hill. He's only 33 years old. I mentioned he was top 5 pound for pound. That run he went on through Usman in fight 2 and 3 in Covington, it was super impressive. It woke me up to who he actually is. But there had to be a reason that I missed who he actually was on the way up, meaning that it hasn't always been the smoothest ride, from the near collapse against Nate Diaz, from, you know, the eye poke, bad luck, no contest against Bilal, to even like getting beat up by Masvidal backstage at a key pivotal point in his career. Nothing seemed to go his way until it did, when it mattered most in the 5th round in the rematch with Usman, and you had the headshot dead and this great Rocky story. But what I'm trying to figure out, like I said, is not if Edwards is past it, but is Edwards truly the guy that he was in those matchups against Usman and Covington of late, meaning elite, top 5 pound for pound, can figure out it. No matter what you give him, he can figure it out. Or is he what we've seen a lot from fighters, a streaky fighter who looks like the goods for 2 to 3 fights, and then kind of you see his limitations? Was that Bilal fight a result of his limitations, or one bad night at the office, fighting at a bad time? Maybe he flew in too late. All those things you can talk about. That's the real story, obviously, but just the same, great matchmaking. It's time for Sean Brady to show if he really is for real.
All right, guys, I just want to thank Manscaped for making sure Submission Radio is still around and pumping out the content for you. As you know, there's a lot of costs that go into making this program, and Manscaped makes it possible for me to bring the show to you. And what about this? The best grooming tools for men in the world. You go to manscaped.com/submission right now. Get your code word submission, 20% off and free shipping. I want to bring attention to the Manscaped Beard and Balls bundle. It has you covered from cheek to cheek. It's time to weed whack, hedge trim, and make sure the lawn is looking manicured for the season, because nothing says fresh start like a sharp beard, and more importantly, a properly landscaped lawn. Join over 12 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and use the code word submission, 20% off and free shipping right now. The Beard Hedger keeps your beard crisp like a freshly bloomed flower, while the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra clears out the underbush, because confidence grows best with the right tools. You get customizable trimming, the skin-safe technology designed to minimize nicks and irritation. And what about the long-lasting power? Enjoy up to 60 minutes of runtime with the Beard Hedger and 75 minutes with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It's waterproof design. Both devices feature waterproof design, and you can get it risk-free now. Manscaped offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Manscaped.com right now. Use the code word submission. Get 20% off and free shipping today, and don't forget to share it on socials with us. I'll be sharing all of your purchases through our Instagram stories, so make sure to tag us at Submission Radio. And thanks for supporting the program. And guys, I also want to talk to you about SAILY. SAILY supports this show as well with its beautiful eSIM, one of the best eSIMs on the market today. Don't line up at the airport having to change out your SIM cards. If you sign up to these local plans that lock you in for a month at a time, are you kidding me? Forget that. SAILY is so simple. Look at this right now. I jump on the app, I choose my location, I choose my plan, and boom, I am ready to go. You can use one SAILY account for all sorts of destinations. Don't create a new account every time you go somewhere else. It's cheap, it's easy. It gives you the amount of data that you need, and you get an ad blocker on there and threat protection, so it protects you from malicious malware as you travel the world. As you connect to all of these different Wi-Fis, be protected with SAILY. It is the best in the business, and I just want to tell you guys right now, you can support the show and yourself by going online and using the code word submission at SAILY, or go to saily.com/submission, or click the link in the description below. You get 15% off your first purchase. That's 15% off your first purchase, and you guys can try it right now. Go to saily.com/submission now. Support this show. Every single purchase makes it possible for SAILY to keep supporting this program and keeps the show coming out. Even more importantly, keeps you protected in all that travel. So go to saily.com right now /submission. And now back to the program. Listen, they call him Rocky. I want to see that fire from Leon Edwards. You and Luke spoke about it in the last episode of Morning Combat, but we've seen moments from Edwards where he's seemingly fallen asleep behind the wheel, the Nate Diaz fight, and countless others. I'm actually looking to see, can he take it a next step further? Yeah. Everyone's saying you're done. No one's talking about you in the picture. You were pound for pound, and now no one really is even thinking about you fighting for the title. Can you find some kind of fire to show everybody, hey, I am that guy and more, and you should be thinking about me for this welterweight belt? I'd love to see that from Leon Edwards. I think he's too much of a nice guy to have that, speaking with him and being around him. But his coach, Dave Lavelle, he pushed what we heard, apparently this 5 a.m. thing, to me, he said was an issue. So apparently he spent thousands of dollars on coaches and it didn't work. Some people just aren't morning people, BC. Just quickly before we wrap up, Carlos Ulberg versus Jan Błachowicz. He's from this region. Black Jag coming out of CKB. Massive moment for him here. Fighting against a former champion and someone who, you know, not many people have been lucky enough to figure out. Fighting on the back end of their career in Jan, but still a very difficult assignment, right, BC? What are we thinking here with this Carlos Ulberg matchup? Can he be the dark horse in this division that could be potentially fighting for the belt very soon?
I mean, he certainly looked like that in the run he's been on after losing, being knocked out in his official UFC debut, Ulberg. And then the escalation of that winning streak, which took us into his last fight against former title challenger Volkan Ozdemir, where kind of showed you over 3 rounds exactly who he is and that he's ready for the best. Great matchmaking once again. Crossroads matchup, but the cool part about it, and I talked to both gentlemen today, is both believe a victory catapults them to a title shot against the winner conceivably of Ankalaev versus Pereira too, if that's what happens. Obviously, they seem to be going potentially in different directions. It's not just the age of 42 for Błachowicz. You know, he talked to me, he talked to a lot of other people in the last week. He had double shoulder surgery. That's the reason why he was out nearly 2 full years. There was absolute belief in his mind that he might retire and not come back in the midst of that. So it's one of these weird fights where if you told me you had a crystal ball and you told me Błachowicz bounced back and that the legendary Polish power was too much for Ulberg and that we saw that gap in experience, heck, I could believe you. Just the same, if Black Jag came out there with the quick hands, the fact that he's been more active, he's young, he's hungry, he's probably got the sauciest DMs in all of MMA. Good Lord, would I like to check those out. I could see him just the same getting a resounding victory. You love those fights where you got legitimate questions about both. I would say in these situations, you typically ride the younger fighter, the more active fighter, the hotter hand. No question. That is Ulberg. But light heavyweight, maybe it's not real heavyweight where age doesn't matter and you can resurface in your 40s and all of that. But you can linger We have seen Glover Teixeira win the title when we thought he was all done. We have seen guys really hang around at 205 and show that if they've got that power, if they've got that one part of their game, the grappling, what have you, they can hang in there. I don't think Błachowicz has looked awful in the fights he has lost in recent years, or the draw with Ankalaev for the title. I just think he's made a couple mistakes. He can make adjustments here. He can come back hungry, but I don't really know which direction this is going, man. And that's the best feeling to have entering one of these big fights.
Crazy thing is, Błachowicz, the initial Tom Aspinall, the guy that John Jones didn't really want to fight, right? During the peak of his run, it was like, I think I'm going to take a break right here. He was absolutely devastating. Let's see if he can return. That's interesting, man. Leon Edwards, Błachowicz, two guys kind of trying to show us what's going on. There's going to be a lot of questions answered. Last question from me, though. John Cena heel promo. What do we rate that out of 10?
So I have.
It was a bit whiny. Was it a bit whiny?
It was a bit whiny. And I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I'm going to watch it tonight. I've been a little bit behind, but I've seen a couple of the clips. I've had debates about it and talked about it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I kind of wanted him to come out in the full, like, you know.
Yeah, new music.
Yeah, I wanted the suit. I wanted the corporate Cena. I wanted the expensive shoes. I wanted him to sit on a kid's foot. But coming out in the way he did with all the bling that you can buy at WWE shop, and then turning that on the people. And from what I did hear, basically saying, no, it's you guys that were at fault. You kept this crappy gimmick alive. It was shameless. I mean, that is brilliant. There does seem to be, is it a surprise post Vince McMahon? No. Give Trips the book and find out what happens. There does seem to be a renaissance in the way WWE is booking in recent years. It's great to see, although I haven't been hardcore day-to-day, week-to-week like I was when I was covering it for 4 or 5 years at the highest level nationally. It's pulling me back in, going heel Cena, chasing Cody, the ultimate babyface at Mania. I'm here. This sells itself. I'm fired up. I'm ready.
Dude, I'm fired up too. And I'm fired up to check out these interviews that you've done. You've spoken to Jan, you've spoken to Carlos. Tell me what's coming up this week. MK, of course, you call on the boxing this weekend. Man, you are a busy man, BC. Absolutely killing the game.
Yeah, thank you. You can check out the Brian Campbell Experience on YouTube. Of course, always Morning Combat every Monday and Friday. But this Saturday, Las Vegas, in the States, PBC on Amazon Prime. I will be on the call as unified junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora headlines a triple header. So great times ahead.
BC, thank you so much, man. I can't wait to see you kill it. Thanks for joining me on Submission Radio.
You got it, buddy.